Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here to the Flatout Racing Network's coverage of race number 7 of the 58th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. Had a little bit of an off week last week, drivers and commentators alike, as we all watched the duels at Daytona, but now it's time for these drivers to get back to business, and it is down to crunch time. I'm Seth Cole, being joined by Matt McIntyre, and Matt, Race 7, 8-race regular season. It's the next to last chance for drivers to make their way into the playoffs. And you and I were talking before we came on the air. Different drivers have different agendas. Certain drivers have already won. A lot of drivers are up there either inside the top 12 or just outside the top 12. But the drivers we're really going to be focusing on here tonight are the drivers that are kind of coming into this race, if not in a must-win situation, having to pick up enough points in the next 2 races to at least get up inside the top 12 in points if they don't get a victory between now and then. So say you're a driver in that situation. Do you approach tonight as a night to get a consistent finish, or are you gunning for that checkered flag to get that automatic locked-in spot?
At this point, I've got to go for the checkered flag because, like I say, just taking it safe and just trying to point my way in is probably not going to help. So I'm just gonna go, and I'm sure even guys that are like well up in the points, like Joe himself, even even they're not safe because we're at Talladega. You know how these things go. There is no guarantee for anybody.
We're at Talladega, and we have a full field tonight. 40 drivers are going to take the green flag. So that means that while there are a lot of points to be gained, to your point, drivers that right now are, sitting 8th, 9th, 10th in the point standings, above that 12th in the standings cut line, if they have a bad run tonight, they could just as easily fall outside the top 12 and not necessarily be in a must-win, but be close to it heading into the regular season finale next week.
Yeah, the only guys that are sitting pretty are the ones that are locked in, and even they're scared.
Got, I believe, 2 drivers that are locked into the playoffs via their victories. The other ones are up inside the top 12 in points. Our first 2 winners on the season, Doug Kulik and John Godfrey, they are currently outside the top 12 in points, but they're sitting, if I recall correctly, 13th and 15th. So they still have a pretty comfortable advantage between themselves and that 20th in the standings cut line, but you mentioned Joe DeSpirito. He is the pole sitter for today's race. He'll be alongside of Bob Sire. Mentioned it's a full field as row 2 is going to hold Rodney Sullins and Doug Kulik. David Cannon joins Cy Jones in row 3. Row 4, Josh Metallic and Ronald Lucet making his first start in the season. He'll be rolling off 8th. Jeff Crivello and Brian Lavelle, they're going to complete the top 10. Tate Dorsey and Wiley Coate, they're back in row 6. Row 7, Jason Scheck and JT Mayhew. Row 8 with Billy Elliser and Wayne Pribnow. Tim Nofsker and Ken Roberts, they're going to be in row 9, and completing the top 20 will be Jessica Shelton and Kelly Causey. Jess normally up here in the booth, but she's down doing some driving duties here this evening. Mark Paglia, he's going to be in row 11 with Bobby Farrell. Row 12 finds Greg Palmer and Donnie Garrett. Bob Seminara is going to complete the top 25 as he's alongside of former winner John Godfrey. Andre Mahjong, he's making his first start on the season. He's going to share row number 14 with Brian Schilling. Row 15 completing the top 30, Richard Martin and Robbie Nisus. In 31st place will be Glenn Harris. He joins Frank Rivard. Rivard making his first start on the year. Chuck McClure and Grant Wesley, they're going to be back in row 13. Row 14 will be Bob Dixon and Dave Melson. Or correction, that's actually row 19, 18 and 19. And then in the final row is going to be Mike Rogers and Keith Hughes. Bringing up the rear of the field, Jeremy Jeffries. There's a couple of big names with the fact that we've got the Lotto qualifying here that are starting towards the rear of the field. McClure, Wesley, Bernie Mobbs, Keith Hughes, 2-time winner on the season. Jeremy Jeffries, the last out winner 2 weeks ago. But we've seen here in the past, these drivers, they know enough of how the runs take place, how to find drafting partners to work their way up to the front. But does the strategy change just a little bit on how aggressively they move through the field with it being 40 cars taking this green?
I mean, I think it does, but then again, you have to be very careful because we've seen with these trucks, one minor mistake can just destroy the field as we have a little bit of a stack up on this pacing.
we got a couple of drivers that have voluntarily dropped to the back, and so everybody's trying to figure out all of where they need to start here. Bob Sire was supposed to be on the outside of the front row through the random qualifying. Matt ended up getting generated to roll off fourth, and so since both the 027 dropped to the back, and Matt's obviously up here in the booth with me, David Cannon, who was going to roll off sixth, he moves up 2 rows. He's going to be on the outside of the front row for the start of this race. Pace car is going to make the left-hand turn to pit lane. 66 laps of racing. It's the last opportunity for drivers at a track that they've been the most comfortable at. This was the track we were at week after week after week for 57 seasons. This is the first time, the first season that we now alternate between Talladega and BSR, the regular season finale next week. Last opportunity for your comfort level to try and find victory lane to race your way into the playoffs. Joe DeSpirito brings us down to the start-finish line, and we are green. When double wide, Matt, there's always that anxiousness, always the adrenaline at the very beginning. A lot of times drivers, they'll get those big toes, those big runs, and want to force it 3 wide. In the early going here, a lot of these guys, they're going to have to rein those horses back because, you know, the want is there, the need is there to pick up that spot ahead, but at the same time, we hear it always said, whether it be a super speedway, a short track, a road course, you can't win the race on the first lap, but you can certainly lose it.
Oh yeah, and definitely at a track like this where even the minorest bump can just cause utter carnage.
David
Got the
Cannon
54
is going to lead the first
dropping
lap.
to the
Look at
back.
that. Yeah, Robbie Nisus ducking out of lines. A couple of drivers actually moving up to that third line that I think are doing that on purpose to try and move forward.
54 spawn.
And caution is out.
Looks like it was just him. I just happened to be watching his car when that happened.
A couple of drivers there, JT Mayhew, Frank Rivard towards the back. They've lost touch, but they may have just been slowing to avoid the spinning Robbie Nisus machine, as this is not being raced back. This is frozen field. The drivers are holding their positions and making their way back to the start-finish line, holding said positions. So Joe DeSpirito was apparently out in front at the time that the caution flew, so he will bring us back to the start-finish line, and he will be leading us under our first pacing laps of the night. Let's go back and see if we can find out what happened to Robbie Nisus. You pointed it out before, Matt, that he appeared to be jumping out of line, maybe trying to fall to the back.
That's what it looked like, and then looked like a third lane was starting to form, and then
Mike Rogers in the 011 that was in the middle line and came up into the 54 of Robbie Nisus. You talk about that third lane forming. We're going to go back and look again. So it looks like Dave Melson moves up there into that third lane. And I don't know if Mike Rogers didn't realize that he wasn't clear on the 54. It was almost like he was trying to move up to that third lane as well, but he was definitely not clear at all. I'm not sure if just he misjudged maybe the momentum, thought that he would have been past Robbie Nisus by the time he moved up there, but obviously contact made, and interesting to see who ends up claiming responsibility for that incident, but it almost just seemed like the Mike Rogers ran Robbie Nisus out of room. Another look at it. All right there with the banking here at Talladega. That 54 almost a couple of times looked like it might capsize. The left side tires were off the racing surface. Then the right sides. He's pretty lucky that that thing actually stayed on the ground.
it's interesting. It looks like as the 38, the Wonder Chevy, goes up, it looks like Robbie comes down a little bit to try to get in line behind him, and then that 011 is just there.
Caution is out for the first time tonight. We had some drivers, quite a number of them, hit pit road. We'll document all of who came down to more than likely top off the fuel tank here. I mean, 66 lap race, we've seen it before. Early cautions sometimes mess up the strategy in terms of the fuel window. We know from start to finish, if we ran green flag, that we would have 3 pit stops during the course of the race. But now, who knows? Depending on when we go back green and how much they can save under pacing, could be a 2-stop for some of these drivers. But most of the drivers up here at the front, Spirito, David Cannon, Josh Metallic, Rodney Sullins, they wanted the track position over the fuel.
And I'm not sure how the '09 trucks run. Do they run similar to the CTS 15?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Okay,
identical
so
CTS physics. So we're looking the 19 to 20, maybe 21 laps you can make it on a tank of fuel.
well, with where we're at in the race, that actually looks like it might even have to be a three-stopper, depending on what kind of chaos happens.
We're even seeing our front runners here that didn't come to pit road throwing in the clutch. Mentioned this before, you can visibly tell when a driver is clutching. The truck body, the chassis kind of bogs down into the track. And saw Joe DeSpirito. He was clutching quite a bit down the back straightaway. Josh Metallic was doing the same. We should get the lights out atop the pace car this time by, since no drivers off the lead lap. Looks like all 40 cars are going to still remain on the lead lap and running. Mentioned we would document the drivers that came to pit lane. Looks like 24 drivers elected to
Yeah.
stay out. Billy
No, they stayed
Elliser
on.
on down decided to come down pit lane.
And just said, oh, yeah, the lights are still on for some reason.
Oh, they are.
And several more drivers used this opportunity to come down, fill up.
Mike Rogers, Frank Rivard, Robbie Nisus, Bob Sire, JT Mayhew, there's Tate Dorsey. There's two-time winner Keith Hughes. Bob Seminara in the 712, so
I feel
that
like the
surprises me. I
54 and the
honestly thought
011.
I'm honestly surprised. I thought we would have ended up getting the 1 to green by that point, but nope, got an extra lap of pacing here for these drivers. Let's give the top 12 in points coming into this race the current playoff scenario as things currently stand. Joe DeSpirito, the race leader, is currently the points leader. 2 points he holds over Bobby Farrell. 3 points back in third is Jeremy Jeffries, last time out's winner. 2-time winner Keith Hughes is fourth. He's 6 points back. Brian Schilling, the defending champion, is fifth. He's 8 points out. Josh Metallic is in sixth. He is 9 points back. Grant Wesley, former champ in his own right, he is 7th in points, 13 points back. Kelly Causey is 14 points back in 8th. Richard Martin, currently 9th. He's 20 points out of the points lead. Rodney Sullins is 10th. He's 25 points back. Bob Seminara, who we just saw make that pit stop to top off the fuel tank, he's 11th in points, 36 points out of the points lead. And Bernie Mobbs right now holds that coveted final 12th position in points. He's 37 points out of the points lead. Only 1 point in hand over John Godfrey, 2 points in hand over Jeff Crivello. Godfrey, as mentioned, the season opener winner. He is locked in with his victory, provided he stays in the top 20 in points, as is Doug Hulick, who is 15th in points right now. He is, if my math's correct, 12 points behind 12th in the standings. So if he can't make his way into the top 12, he's got that checkered flag to fall back on. But you want to look at some drivers here tonight to watch if they don't find victory lane that might be able to point their way up inside of the top 12 in points heading into the regular season finale that have really struggled at the beginning of the year. Just on the outside looking in, you've got Chuck McClure, Greg Palmer, Donnie Garrett, Tim Nofsker, Mark Paglia, Bob Dixon. These are drivers that we are used to seeing up there in the playoffs, and right now, if the season were to have ended 2 weeks ago, they would not be battling for the championship, but they've still got 2 more races to work with.
And I've watched a little bit of previous seasons, and like you say, that is rather surprising to hear those big names not having a good day. But do you think that could be a lot of having the BSR mixed in there?
Well, it could be that. I've attributed that as a possibility. I think a huge reason why we have these drivers now kind of struggling, if so to say, has been the random qualifying. The random qualifying has really shaken things up and caused drivers to have to adjust their strategies. Back in the day, you ended up having usually the same 6, 7, 8 drivers up at the top of the leaderboard in qualifying. They had mastered the art of being able to lay down those fast laps. And that translated to them being able to control the draft, control the momentum, the tempo, usually the first half of the race. And more often than not, we'd see a number of those drivers up there at the end of the race. Now you end up getting a lot of the big name drivers that start at the rear of the field. And while we've seen them be able to work their way from the back to the front, there's always the possibility that when you're in the middle of the pack, you're going to be right in the middle of the dreaded big one. No fault of your own, innocent bystander, but that's just the art. And sometimes, the I don't want to say the detriment,
Just
but the bad luck, I guess, of super
well,
speedway racing.
it's just like old Daryl used to say, just being caught in the middle of the eye of that storm when it gets 2, 3, sometimes 4 wide, several rows deep. You just don't know what to do. And here we go.
Go to Spirito, going to get us back under the green flag. And yeah, we've yet to see that eye of the storm. We got kind of lucky with the first caution being really just a solo truck spin. All 40 trucks still running, still on the lead lap as we got single filed out here at the front pretty quickly. Rodney Sullins behind Joe DeSpirito. Looks like David Cannon's going to tuck in line with Josh Metallic. Well, maybe not. He's going to stay to the right rear of that 38 and try and lead an outside line. Metallic's going to stay with him. Of course, Josh, former winner this season. He's got nothing to really worry about, trying to join Keith Hughes as a multi-time winner on the year. And yeah, for all those drivers right now that are former winners this season, they're just looking for more checkered flags before the end of the regular season because more wins means more bonus points when the playoff standings are reformatted.
That and like say, it really seems like with how important points are, how close things are. Yeah, you're better off to go for the win rather than just trying to point your way in.
Oh my gosh, are you seeing this back here around the 7th position? Normally we
Oh
see
dear.
them double wide trying to share that middle line between the white hash marks. They were trying to hold 3 wide with 3 trucks in that. Kelly Causey was forcing his way in there and he was almost door banging Ronald Lucet through 1 and 2.
He's still trying it up top. Nobody wants to go with him right now, but oh, we got a couple trucks getting close together there in the middle.
Got to be careful off of 2 and off of 4. Those trucks on the inside line, they get that little bit of a push-up, that half-groove push-up. And if they're in a tight formation of 3 wide, there's not a lot of room for error. Looks like we've double-wided out back to around the 14th position. Cy Jones on the apron that checks up the inside line. Great saves there by, that was Melson. I believe that was Lavelle, Glenn Harris, Andre Mahjong. Good job checking up as the 7 was trying to recover after having almost all 4 tires down on the apron.
Because there, it was another situation of they almost went 3 wide and just almost wrong place, wrong time disaster.
Cyber almost got on the apron that time through 3 and 4 as well in that Sunoco Chevrolet. As up at the front, Phantom out 3 wide. Now it's Rodney Sullins caught in the middle. Doug Hulick as well. They're in the sucker hole going to the back. Up at the front, Dave Cannon. Oh, Tim Nofsker! What a move to the middle to try and take it 3 wide. He almost got into David Cannon, and he's got Wiley Coate as his wingman.
Oh, DeSpirito disappeared for a minute and came back.
You'd think this was the last lap of the race with the moves we're seeing right now, but nope, we're only 10 laps in. We still got more than about 75% of this race to go. I think these drivers realize the sense of urgency, though. There's only 2 races left. It used to be that you had 10 regular season races to be able to make your way into the playoffs, and now it's been whittled down to 8. That's about, roughly 130 less laps that you have to be able to control your fate towards the postseason.
Yeah, it's 20% less races, so yeah, no wonder they're driving like crazy.
Donnie Garrett down there on the inside. We ended up hearing from him a couple of weeks ago. We know he was on vacation, ended up missing a week. knew that in the final two races, he was probably going to be in a must-win situation. Now, at this point in time, we have him on our chart mathematically eligible to point his way into the top 12, but we know that he wants to get that checkered flag. He ended up crossing the line first in one of our
That
previous races this season, but based off of a post-race review, that win ended up being given to Keith Hughes. So trying for a little redemption here tonight is driver 77.
we are 3 wide all the way back except for the front 4 and the last row.
And you want to know what the scary part is? That's normal for this series. They're used to doing this. They do this just about every single week. And oh my goodness, I'll tell you, I've been in the middle of these 3 wide situations with these guys, and we've got a caution. Yellow flag is out. I don't know what all happened, but I noticed the caution lights were on
We
down the
got some
back
guys on the
straightaway.
bottom of the track. The 27
Oh yeah,
is going slow in 2.
Bob Sire, he's got some right side damage, also a buckle on the left rear quarter panel, and damage on the left side, looks like. Don't know who he might have gotten together with. Looks like maybe again a relatively small wreck for our second caution of the day, which is kind of surprising to say after you've muttered the sentence 3 wide, several rows deep all the way through the rest of the field, but let's go back and see if we can find out what happened.
I have found it, and that 011 is not having a very good day, getting pinched down by trucks yet again. Just he actually this time he drifts up and just spins the heck out of the 027. I'm surprised the 43
Yeah,
can't tell which 43 that is. It's
yeah,
a
Richard
green
Martin,
one.
Demar.
I'm shocked he survived through that.
I think he got a tiny piece of it, but nothing that's going to affect him. I
Yeah,
want to
but the
look at
fact
this
that
angle here. Did the 011 of Mike Rogers maybe get his left sides down on the apron? Because it almost looked like that might have been what shot him up the way it did.
I feel like he
Uh,
might have.
well, maybe.
Oh, just barely as they turned into turn 1. He
Yeah,
just clipped it.
definitely drifted up, that's for sure. Had his hands full, and second incident that Mike Rogers has been involved in here tonight. He got into Robbie Nices for the first yellow, and then now into Bob Sire for the second caution of the evening.
Just
And this
credit to
is about 6, 7 laps away from when these drivers would have made their first pit stop under green. We're gonna have to try and work the calculators, see if it's a 2-stop race from here on out, or if they might have to do a 3-stop.
I just have to absolutely give credit to Demar and the 46 of Tate Dorsey on avoiding a 90-degree sideways Bob Sire.
We got lucky too with the fact that that was somewhat close towards the rear of the field because, to your point, a nice avoidance by some of those drivers, but if that had taken place further up, more than likely, there wouldn't have been an exit avenue to be able to avoid the spinning truck.
Yeah, because that was the last row that was 3 wide. Had it been, like, say, Joe, there would have been a massive crash, like you say. But since it was in the back, we got away with one.
It looks like with that being the second incident that the 011 of Mike Rogers caused, looks like his night is over. He will be retired out in the 40th position. The remaining 39 drivers will still be on the lead lap. You see the 35 of Frank Rivard making his first start on the year here in the Tally Challenge. We've seen him in previous seasons, but first time we've seen him here in season 58. He's going to get a bonus point for a lap led. Looks like Jason Scheck, JT Mayhew, and Bob Sire all stayed out as well. They'll probably be on pit lane here in the next lap or two, and it would turn the lead over to the first car off of pit road, which ended up being the 88 of Grant Wesley, former champion from 2 seasons ago, and like Scheck might stay out and lead a lap here and then probably be on pit lane the following lap. While we've got this opportunity here under pacing, working our second caution of the day here in the Tally Challenge 7th season, or 7th race of the season, I should say. This is the 58th season, not the 7th season, but the 7th race of the season, the next to last race of the regular season. We're going to step aside for a commercial break and a word from our sponsor, Ultimate Garage Floors. The following presentation of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series on the Flatout Racing Network is brought to you by Ultimate Garage Floors. Ultimate Garage Floors is very active in the garage remodeling community, staying current with the latest technologies and custom configurations so that we can bring you the highest quality installations. As a Northern Virginia Exposy flooring installer, we focus on garages and commercial flooring to perfect our craft and bring you high results. In a space that gets as much wear and tear as your garage, you want to be able to trust that the cabinets and flooring we install are ready to withstand against high traffic and regular use. That is why we include a lifetime warranty with our services so that you know we stand behind the quality of our work. To get started with a free consultation, call us at 540-931-9006 or visit us on the web at ultimategaragefloorsva.net. That's ultimategaragefloorsva.net. Lights out atop the pace truck. We're going back green flag racing on lap 17 of 66. As we assumed, Jason Scheck headed to pit road after getting a bonus point for a lap lead and turns the race lead over to Grant Wesley. And you think about it here, Matt, we talk about how every point matters right now in terms of either trying to work your way into the top 12 in the point standings or keep yourself in the top 12 in the point standings. Those laps led that some of these drivers are taking and giving up track position to be able to get that bonus point. It could be very important by the time the checkered flag waves next week.
Yeah, just like how we've seen in real life, you're right, that 1 point could determine a playoff chance. Or got a little bit of a stack up in the back. Five truckers around. That might. Big hit by the 35. That might cause a caution.
And watching the pace truck lights, looks like we're still going green. There's Rivard. There's the Wiley Coat Dodge. But the pace truck is still heading for pit road, so that's business as usual. We're going to go back green. I don't know what the 23 of Doug Hewlick's doing there on that top
Jason
side.
Scheck going slow.
Well, it's Wesley, DeSpirito, Knopfsker, McClure, and Garrett, the top five as we get ready to go back green flag racing. Kind of an interesting pace lap there. But nonetheless, green flag waves. We're back underway here. second restart of the evening, and it's the 88 trucks on the inside, the 88 of Wesley, the 088 of Tim Nofsker, and they're going to get themselves clear of that outside line and immediately shift up to that middle groove, the dominant lane here at Talladega.
Yeah, and that being in that middle groove definitely helps control some of the chaos that happens behind you.
We've mentioned too that middle line, people wonder, well, why do they run it so much? Because on that inside line, not only is there a bunch of checkup with it being the shorter way around the racetrack, there's also that little bit of push up off of 2 and off of 4. Pretty much, if you're in that middle line or even up in that third lane, there's more in the throttle time. You don't have to breathe the throttle when you've got a truck in front of you, and that keeps the momentum moving forward, and why we see so many times that that middle line or that extreme outside line, normally, depending on the number of trucks they've got, it makes its way up to the front. Oh, truck on the wall! Rodney Sullins and Ken Roberts is around. Big one has struck on the back straightaway. One truck's up and over. I think that was Jeremy Jeffries. On his roof, it comes back on all 4 wheels, but everyone scatters to avoid as we had about at least a half dozen trucks, if not more, involved in this one. Well, call it the big one. It may be only the first of many big ones here tonight, but that took out a couple of heavy hitters there, and there's the first truck I saw break out of the formation, the 38 of Rodney Sullins. Third caution of the day. We got away with our first 2 cautions, pretty much just involving solo trucks. Not the case this time. And Jeremy Jeffries, who 2 weeks ago picked up the checkered flag to secure himself a spot in the playoffs, he's going to have some roof damage, I'm pretty sure, because that truck was up and on its lid for a good 100 feet or so down the back straightaway.
Yeah,
Ken
taking a
Roberts,
look
I know,
at it.
went around as well in the 55, but his truck looks relatively okay.
Yeah, I was taking a look at it, and it looked like I don't think I've ever seen a case of bumper grab on the straightaway. They were at least a quarter of the way down the straightaway
Oh,
before
wow. Yeah.
Jeremy hooked Rodney and just went up, hit the wall, and then came right back down into the 55.
I feel like if I recall correctly, I think it was the last time we were here at Talladega, we had something similar to that where it ended up being a bumper grab wreck that looked like from initial point it shouldn't have even been a wreck.
Oh, I see how the one got flipped. The 712 was trying to slow down just to avoid the wreck and just had nowhere to go.
And Roberts
That
said he went around, but he definitely was involved. He had Jeremy Jeffries right up on his rear deck lid. Take another look at it here. Follow the one of Jeremy Jeffries this time. Like Bernie Mobbs got into fellow Dodge Billy Elliser, turned him up into Seminara just prior to Seminara getting the one of Jeremy Jeffries. And a lot of drivers there did a good job of just getting on the brakes and waiting till everything settled out. Shelton, Harris, Wiley Coate. You know, if you think about it, Wiley Coate ended up getting spun out there under pacing. That had him towards the back. That might have been a blessing in disguise because he might have very well been up right in the middle of this had he been in the position he was originally supposed to be prior to the green
because I
flag coming back out.
Yeah, I think you're right because I feel like he was restarting right around the 55 and the one. Since they were the main guys, well, as well as the 38 involved in the wreck. That's that might be the one time I see a bit of carnage on a caution lap. It'd be a good thing.
A big hit for Rodney Sullins. Now the big question mark is, I mean, it's always a question mark when it comes to super speedways of is that car up to speed with it being moderate damage. Sometimes a hit that looks like it's going to take a driver out of a race, it ends up keeping them still able to compete for the race lead as long as they've got a drafting partner, and vice versa. Something that looks like it might be just, a minor scratch could end up having a driver a couple miles per hour off the pace with aero damage. So we'll wait have to wait and see who all is on which side of the spectrum. But if I'm to single out a few trucks right there that might be in a bit of danger arrow-wise from the hits they received, I'm looking at the 712, the 38, and the 1. Now, Jeremy Jeffries is already, at this point in time, locked into the playoffs with his victory a couple of weeks ago. He's also third in overall points. Bob Seminara right now is 11th in the point standings, only 1 point ahead of the cut line, and Rodney Sullins is just above him, 10th in the point standings, 12 points ahead of the cut line. And, normally if we end up having a series that runs at speedways and short tracks and mile and a halves and all that, 12 points, you can probably manage that gap in the next 2 weeks. But when you consider the fact it's a full field here tonight, it's a super speedway where positions don't change every lap, they change every corner, points are constantly being reshuffled. It's very difficult to be able to play defense and make sure that you keep that points bubble that you had coming into the race, make sure that you still have it, if not increase it when the race is over. Because really, in super speedway racing, you make your own luck, but at the same time, you're at the mercy of everybody else around you also.
Yeah, because I'm also looking back and I noticed another part. I feel like Bob Seminara actually might have avoided that wreck, but then just right behind him, 31 of Bernie Mobs got into the 26 of Elliser, and that's what like pinned Bob into the side of into the driver's side of Jeffries. Good lord, that was a no wonder he went flipping so many times.
Well, incredibly,
Monster hit.
it's looking like, despite the fact we had some pretty big hits taken in that wreck, nobody has retired out of the race, including the truck that we had upside down, Jeremy Jeffries. But really, if you think about it, at this point of the season, even if you're involved in a wreck, even if your truck may be down on power, you're probably just going to go out there and log laps, right? And hope that it's a race of attrition, because you can't afford a DNF if you're going to try and make your way into the playoffs, especially if you're trying to point your way into the playoffs. If that engine's still running, you're going to stay out there. You're going to log as many laps as you can, try and pick up as many positions and as many points as you can, make it at least somewhat reasonable of a scenario going into the regular season finale next week.
Oh, definitely. That's a tactic that I've incorporated in my short time racing, even with you guys in an SCRA. Because you
So,
never know, especially with Talladega, what's gonna happen, as we've already seen.
So working the calculators here, Matt, we're going back green with 44 laps to go. We know the fuel window at max, if you're able to save a little bit under a long green flag run, is 21 laps. That means that we'd be about 2 to 3 laps short of making it the rest of the way on one more pit stop. But kind of early to be saying this, but we do have to kind of discuss it. These drivers might not necessarily be racing to that checkered flag at lap 66. We know the point of no return is normally around the completion of lap 62, and we've seen drivers in the past, if they're able to catch a yellow and have the race end under caution, they can clutch and save enough. Maybe it be a lap and a half, maybe 2 laps of fuel under pacing. So, in some ways, we may be looking at a one-stop race from here to the end, but I don't know. With what we've seen here in the first 20 laps, my gut's telling me we may not have seen our last big one.
I would agree with that, and I don't remember if it was this season or last season, but like you said, Hewlick got a win by pitting, coming to they're coming to a right the lap 8 caution happened,
Yeah, yeah, that
and
was
it
this
wound up
season,
giving him the
race 2.
win. So he pulled that old Jeff Burton strategy, all-star strategy, and it won him a race.
We've ended up having 2 scenarios kind of like that at BSR, which we'll be going back to next week with playoff spots hanging in the balance. The playoff grid will be compiled at the conclusion of that race. We've yet to really see something like that play out this year at Talladega, but tonight could be the night as Tim Nofsker leads the long train down the back straightaway. Looks like Kelly Causey's going to be the odd man out. Now he gets, I think he actually just got let in by the 043 of Brian Lavelle, so he'll tuck into the 5th spot. But very interesting when you look at this top 4. Nofsker, Mark Paglia, Chuck McClure, and Brian Schilling, because you start to notice trends here when you see these races week after week. These 4 drivers, they love coming down pit road together. So if we end up having it where it comes down to that final green flags pit stop, I guarantee you these 4 are all going to come down on the same lap.
I can pretty good idea that that will happen. And I'm taking a look in the back here, and yeah, he's still running, but that one truck is definitely hurting because he can
There you
only get up to 170, 172 looks like.
Jeremy Jeffries
But
right
now that
now
he's lost
just
the
trying to see if he can pick up some spots, obviously down on power. He's locked into the playoffs. That's the good news for him right now. His victory, it's very unlikely he's going to fall outside the top 20 in points in the next 2 races, but wanted to battle for that regular season championship as well, get those extra bonus points heading into the playoffs, and tough break there for driver number 1. One thing we haven't talked about yet coming into tonight is the bracket series. Bracket series is actually in its quarterfinals on the winners side. Bernie Mobbs taking on Josh Metallic here this evening, and then Brian Schilling up against Mark Paglia. Those 2 right now separated by the Chuck McClure truck inside of this top 4. On the loser side bracket tonight, it's Keith Hughes taking on Joe DeSpirito, John Godfrey versus Glenn Harris. Bob Dixon will maybe advance here tonight as he was going up against Jeremy Jeffries, but Jeremy still out there trying to salvage what he can. And then Richard Martin going up against Kelly Causey. The drivers from those respective battles that win will move on to face McClure, Farrell, Seminara, and Garrett in round 4 of the losers bracket next week.
It seems like up at the front here they've realized, okay, we need to settle it out for a while now, because all the way back to, oh, even all the way back to 19th, actually, they've decided to take a second to chill.
Metallic, Greg Palmer, Jessica Shelton mixing it up there just inside of the top 20. Andre Mahjong there in the 27. You gave me a little education on that Andre Mahjong livery. F1 related for him. That Toyota
Yeah,
Tundra.
back from 1999.
And he's going to tuck in front of Ron Lucet in the 62. Well, as soon as I say that, Lucet now going to jump down to the inside line. And you talked about the fact that now these drivers have kind of realized, okay, we got to start settling in here. I usually say it takes a caution for the drivers in the early going to kind of get brought back to their senses, get the adrenaline down. Looked like it took us a big one to end up getting these drivers settled down, because we're 3 cautions in. The first 2 cautions, though, were really just solo truck spins. We didn't have a lot of torn up trucks at that point in time, but that big wreck on the back straightaway looks like it's kind of startled everybody back to their senses to realize we haven't even reached halfway. Let's not tear our equipment up just yet.
Yeah, it took one of our other friends who's not racing tonight, one of his favorite things of a flip to settle these guys down for now. But we know that that's not going to last.
Pretty
They'll
impressive,
be
though.
back.
3 cautions so far, 12 laps under pacing, 40 car field, and we've got 39 of them still running and on the lead lap. And it looks like, at least based off of my telemetry, looks like 38 of them are still up to speed in this lead pack.
Yeah, the 38 is right there. There's a little bit of a second pack, but for the most part, they're all still pretty close together.
There's that second pack you were talking about. Rodney Sullins and Bob Seminara are in this mix. They were involved in that last wreck. Frank Rivard in the 35 and the 54 of Robbie Nisus. So Seminara and Sullins right now going about 192, 193 in the draft. Let's look at drivers here at the tail end of the pack. They're going 200, 201. So yeah, I'm wondering if maybe the 38 and the 712 have got some aero damage from the wreck. I also noticed here the 55 of Ken Roberts is losing touch with the lead group, and he was involved in that big wreck. So it looks like the aero damage gremlins have affected about 4, 5, 6 drivers here that were involved with some pretty big hits in that third caution of the day.
And I'm even seeing this 54 is struggling to keep up with this little mini pack. So, and he was the one in the first wreck. So, yeah, definitely starting to affect.
How does that affect drivers as far as their playoff hopes and their scenarios heading into next week? Well, we already talked about Sullins and Seminara. They were 10th and 11th in points coming into this race, and the top 12 get locked in on points. Neither of those drivers have a victory. Ken Roberts, he comes into this race 32nd in the point standings, and we pretty much were going down the list, and based off of rough calculations, pretty much anybody that wasn't inside the top 23, 24 in points, they pretty much mathematically weren't going to be able in 2 races through consistency to point their way up inside of the top 12, and Ken Roberts is below that cut line, 32nd in points, so it looks like he would be absolutely in a must-win situation next week, and I'm not necessarily certain even with a race victory if he'd be able to accumulate enough points to get up inside the top 20 in the point standings. And then, of course, Jeremy Jeffries, we documented he's 3rd in points after his victory a couple of weeks ago. He will probably free fall through the top 10. Don't know if he'll fall outside of the top 10, but of course has that checkered flag to still be able to fall back on in his bid for a spot in this season's playoffs. As up at the front, they continue to single file here, and if I recall correctly, we went back green, I think it was on lap 23. So we're looking roughly around lap, going to be 44, when these drivers would have to start considering making maybe the final pit stop of the day.
And going back to the points real quick, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but even Rodney, he's sitting there 10th in points. Look at how if it finished how it is right now, that will probably hurt him pretty severely. But the only one I think that's been involved in a wreck so far that might not be affected because, well, I don't really think he could have pointed his way in, as you said, was Robbie in the 54. That first incident.
Yep. Yeah, he was way down below the cut line of 12th in the standings, so yeah, unlikely, even if he was able to mount a comeback tonight, that he'd be able to point his way in. As I'm trying to figure out here, I'm looking real quickly at my telemetry, and it looks like we've got 31, 32 drivers up in this lead pack right now. We've lost a couple more drivers off the tail end of this pack. Jason Scheck in the 44 has appeared to lose the draft, and I don't recall him being involved in any incident.
We got a wreck in the back.
Oh, big flip there by the 77 of Donnie Garrett.
And, well, Seth, so much for being calm.
There's the second big one. Well, I'm noticing a couple of drivers there. Keith Hughes in the 82, Billy Elliser in the 26, and Donnie Garrett in the 77. I think those were some drivers that were trying to organize a second lane in a march to the front, and I'm wondering if there might have been little contact between the inside and outside line. Crivello, Wiley Coat also got pieces of this. 4th caution of the day. That 77 caught quite a bit of air there through the tri-oval.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what was going on. They started mixing it up. Just like, guys were changing 2 and 3 lanes, it looked like, when that kicked off.
I'll forget everything that I was talking about as far as speculation on fuel. Now they definitely cannot make it the rest of the way without one more pit stop after this. Like Andre Mahjong in the 27 might have been in the vicinity here.
I found it.
Oh,
Looks
60.
like the 77 of Donnie goes up, hits the wall, and then comes down right in front of Keith, and that just starts everything.
He also was getting run out of room by the 62 of Ronald Lucet, that being Keith Hughes, and Donnie Garrett was having to kind of move up to give the space necessary, and as you said, ran out of room coming off of the corner. We're going to go back just a little further here going into turn 3 because there was some door banging between the 27 and the 77. Andre Mahjong on that inside line. Watch this as he pushes up right there, makes contact. That forces the 3 wide with Hughes in the middle, and then Ronald Lucet gives the 82 no room, and Garrett gets into the wall, comes down into Keith Hughes. Bernie Mobb's got a piece. He squeezes Greg Palmer into the wall. There's Crivello. There's Wiley Coate. And DMAR, Richard Martin, goes for a spin through the grass.
Even the 8 of Glenn Harris had a. Oh, he had a big hit to the inside wall after getting hit by Donnie Garrett coming down.
Here's what happened with Richard Martin. He got on the brakes and goes for a slide through the grass. You saw Glenn Harris that you just talked about, Matt, going on the left side of the screen. We'll focus on him on the next replay. So maybe about 10 drivers getting bits and pieces of this incident here. And if there's outside of the corners, if there's one area of the racetrack that is super difficult to avoid a wreck with not knowing where the different trucks are going to spin, it's got to be that tri-oval.
Oh, yeah. Just, especially when you get just one sideways, it has the potential to destroy the field.
That hit for Glenn Harris that you talked about, that wasn't even safer barrier. That was that steel Armco barrier there heading towards
Oof.
the entrance of pit road. That's going to be big time front end damage and more than likely aero damage for Glenn Harris. We saw that Rodney Sullins is dealing with aero damage, and he took a pretty good shot to the inside safer barrier on the back straightaway with only the left front. So I feel that Krispy Kreme Chevrolet will probably be somewhat off the pace for the remainder of this one. I don't
If it even
know.
continues.
I don't know if he got hit from behind or not. The impact into that steel guardrail might have been enough that it actually gave him damage on the rear spoiler also. Bobby Nice is going to stay out, and he'll lead a lap. He'll probably be on pit road the next time. That would turn the lead over to Joe DeSpirito in the 24. We saw on the last time that the leaders came to pit lane, Grant Wesley won the battle over Joe. Well, vice versa this time. Joe bests Grant. A little gamesmanship there on pit lane to see who's going to be leading us to green these past couple of restarts. Looks like Nofsker will line up in third, Mark Paglia in fourth, and Chuck McClure will end up being in the fifth position. Jeremy Jeffries, this caution, big break for him. He may be off the pace, but we saw him get put a lap down under green flag conditions. 2 drivers get the free pass. He was the only driver -1, so he'll be back on the lead lap. And with the drivers we saw take some pretty good licks there in that wreck, he might have some drivers to be able to battle with here on this next green flag run.
Oh yeah, and I was happened to look back after you mentioned the rear damage on the 8, and yeah, definitely that hit to the inside wall destroyed the rear spoiler on that truck. So yeah, there are definitely going to be a few more cars off the pace.
We're working our 4th caution of the evening here. We're going to get the restart with a little less than 30 laps to go. Mention the fact that Jessica Schulten, we have her up here in the booth normally, and she's down there driving, piloting that number 20 Carhartt Toyota Tundra. Heard her over the radio communications saying that with going back green, going to be at about a can and a half short of making it the rest of the way. So there is a pit stop coming up. Here's the interesting thing though. We're going to go back green. Let's say 28, 29 laps left when we get back green. That's about 8 laps, 8 to 9 laps to play with right there until you get to the fuel window. It's going to be a question for these drivers of, do you want to come to pit road as soon as the fuel window is open to make it the rest of the way, or do you maybe stretch it as far as you can, run that thing out of fuel, and then make your final pit stop somewhere in the vicinity of maybe 8 to 9 laps remaining?
I I personally feel like it'd be a better idea to try to stretch it because then on the backside, if you pit earlier, that means you might get to lap 65 and a half and run out of gas.
Also think about too, you come to pit road when the fuel window opens, you have to take 2 cans. You stretch it as far as you possibly can, you might only have to take on a can, maybe half a can, depending on just exactly when you're coming to pit road. So that's extra time that you save on pit lane as well.
And especially with how these trucks seem to eat up fuel even more than the cars do. You always got to factor that in too.
Give you a rundown of the top 10 as we're going to be getting ready to go back green on lap 38. Joe DeSpirito is going to be the race leader. He's trying to go coast to coast, pole to win after he led the field to green earlier on tonight. Grant Wesley will line up in second. Tim Nofsker's third, Mark Paglia fourth, Chuck McClure will complete the top 5, Brian Schilling is sixth, David Cannon seventh, eighth Kelly Causey, ninth is Brian Lavelle, and Ronald Lucet is going to complete the top 10. Josh Metallic, he's going to be 11th, John Godfrey in 12th, Jessica Shelton's 13th, Bernie Mob's 14th, Bobby Farrell in 15th, then it's Andre Mahjong, Dave Melson, Wayne Pribnow, Doug Kulik, and Bob Dixon. That will be the top 20. 39 trucks still running with Jeremy Jeffries getting the free pass. All 39 still on the lead lap. The only driver out of the race tonight, Mike Rogers in the 40th position. Getting ready to go back green with less than 30 laps to go here in race 7 of season 58 of the Talladega Challenge. As Joe DeSpirito's Chevrolet, Grant Wesley's Toyota head down through the tri-oval. They're waiting on the flagman, and he's got the green flag back in the air. Let's see now what these drivers elect to do in terms of racing, in terms of the aggression, because this is the point in time that the drivers tell me, Matt, is the race towards the pit stops. You want to pick up, if you can, 1, 2, maybe 3 positions on the track, so that way then you're in a better position to pick up a chunk full of spots on pit road.
Well, the fact that I've already seen one truck attempt 3 wide, though farther back, tells me it's already gonna ramp up right away.
It's
Like,
interesting
there's
too,
no
right?
waiting.
I'm looking at a bunch of trucks that were on our grid here tonight. Mentioned the fact that Frank Rivard, Andre Mahjong, Jessica Shelton, uh, Ronald Lucet. Oh, we got a caution again. Caution's out, but these are drivers that have nothing to lose. They're not able to battle for the championship. They're making their first start in 7 races. They're just out there trophy hunting right now, so they're kind of a proverbial X factor for all the drivers that are trying to have the consistent weeks and get these checkered flags to advance into the championship picture, as like Glenn Harris might have been the reason for
Ooh.
this caution. 46 of Tate Dorsey also appears to be somewhat slow here, coming out of turn 4. And let's see if we can find out what happened for our 5th caution of the day. This, I think, was over in 3 and 4.
Oh, something happened to Bob Sire.
027.
Looks like similar to the first wreck, the
Wow, yeah.
26 just gives him a tiny little bump, and that just shoots him up into the outside wall.
Having to check up for the 43 of Richard Martin. Your point. Very similar to what
Oh,
we saw
because
earlier with Jeremy Jeffries when he was giving a bump to, I believe it was Rodney Sullins at the time.
The 43 bumper grabs the 143 in front of him, so he slows down, and that sends the 027 and having to look for another,
Oh, yeah.
another lane.
Looked like a lot of chain bumping right there. I think that was the 27 of Andre Mahjong up ahead. He checked up, and then everybody else in that outside line was having to check up for the truck in front of them. And it finally dominoed effect back to the contact between the 027 and the 26. And then you just had a bunch of drivers that were all spinning, trying to avoid making contact with each other, including Tate Dorsey. I think I saw the JT Mayhew machine around. We know Glenn Harris got spun. Yeah, Mayhew got into the 46. Rodney Sullins gets involved. Keith Hughes spins out. Oh, we had a
How
truck
did the
flipping there. Robbie Nices in the 54 actually went up and over.
how did the 5 avoid that all?
Taking on board
That
with Wiley Coat in a minute here.
that man just drove through a tornado of trucks.
Nearly got clipped in his left rear there, but was that Glenn Harris? Well, you got
Yes, it
very
was.
lucky.
Mm.
Donnie Garrett in the 77 got involved. Let's take that on board with driver number 5. See how he was able to avoid this one. Wiley Coat in that Castrol GTX. Well, actually, not Castrol GTX. It's actually Castrol Edge. Dodge. Here's his on board with what happened up ahead of him. Use the outside wall to be able to slow down, and you saw 46 of Tate Dorsey spinning around. Richard Martin got spun right there. We saw from Billy Elliser a little bit further up there in the center of 3 and 4. That's how he got involved. And the caution waves for the 5th time here tonight. But this is
And that
something we kind of expected, right? With the sense of urgency drivers were going to have, the moves that were going to be made, we were expecting that we weren't necessarily going to see a green flag race from start to finish. There were going to be drivers that were going to be a little bit risky here tonight to try and see if they could put themselves in a more favorable position going into BSR next week.
but to be fair, from what I've seen from these guys from the other races, and even in previous seasons, this one seems like they're, like you said, since it's a slightly shorter season, seems like they've tripled the intensity. Because my goodness, this looks more like another series than RTG.
And we talked about this too during the break. You know, this is the final time during the regular season that we're running here at Talladega. This is a track from season 1 to season 57 where we came here every single week. Drivers started to get a feel for the racetrack. They got a feel for the setup, how the draft works, which lines to be able to run, which allies to be able to work with. This season, they got thrown a curveball where we alternate between this track and Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway, which we'll be at next week. The racing style is different. The speeds look like they're different. The lines, the preferred lines where the momentum is, appears to be entirely different from here at Talladega. And so for these drivers, the track that they know well here, this Talladega racetrack, they're trying to exploit the fact of them knowing this racetrack better, using this as their opportunity to get into the playoffs rather than having to kind of rely on a bit of an X factor for them when we get to the BSR track next week.
And I can see why they're doing that. I just also am seeing the carnage that it's causing on this side. And like Daryl Waltrip says, it's just racing at Talladega. You're practically racing in the eye of the storm, whether you're leading or you're last. There is nowhere safe.
Well, you really only had drivers that were involved in that wreck that came to pit lane. Most everybody, especially up at the front of the field, stayed out. The reason being, despite this caution period, there was still no way that these drivers would be able to make it the rest of the way if they had come to pit road. So they elect to keep the track position, They're going to get themselves prepared for that one final pit stop, whether it be under green or whether it be under caution. Right now, they would be about 4 laps short of making it the rest of the way had they come to pit road under this caution period. So maybe the strategy of run about 4 to 10 laps, maybe get a caution, and then make that final pit stop under yellow, or else make that pit stop under green flag conditions. But they haven't made a green flag pit stop yet today. So imagine that final pit stop, the money stop, having to be under conditions they haven't experienced yet here in this race. Not to say they don't know how to make green flag pit stops, but it's a lot easier to get a speeding penalty and have to serve a pass through under green and not be able to make up that track position than it is to get it under a caution period.
And especially like say these guys know how to do it on normal weekends, but with the chaos we've seen, I guarantee that there would probably be some chaos in the pit lane on a green flag pit stop. So I probably just jinxed it to join you in the jinxing category. But you don't like say it's you don't know. But based on what I've seen today, it feels like a strong likelihood of happening.
Well, we've been talking about the scenarios of drivers trying to make their way into the top 12 or win their way into the playoffs. It's very likely that when we conclude tonight's race, there'll be a handful of drivers that may have already locked themselves in to the playoffs, regardless of what happens next week. It'll be interesting to see who those drivers are, whether it be maybe mathematically impossible for them to drop outside of the top 12 in the point standings, or mathematically impossible for a driver with a win to drop outside of the top 20. But Grant Wesley in the 88, Tim Nofsker in the 088, they're going to lead us down here, and they're going to get us underway for maybe the final restart of the evening. It's going to be with 24 laps to go.
Had an interesting little gap form in the back with the 27. Didn't quite close up to the 712.
Like they fanned
Not
out
sure what
3
that was
wide
about.
further back there in the pack as well. The one thing about super speedway racing also, up here at the front, you can double wide, you can ride, but if you're at the back,
Oh, there.
you can't ride. You got to go.
Jack McClure tried to make it 3 wide right there. Wisely thought better of it for now.
Tucks back in line behind the 088 of Tim Nofsker. How about Bobby Farrell in that 92? We really haven't talked much about that U.S. Air Force Ford F-Series, but Bobby Farrell, he's been very consistent this year, and coming into tonight, he is second in the points, only to Joe DeSpirito, 2 points back. Bobby Farrell, to my knowledge, has never made the playoffs here in the Tally Challenge, and season 58 may be his postseason debut.
I can tell he's hungry for it, but there's just still a lot of racing left. We can't. I saw a move that scared me for a second, but luckily they settled it out.
Like top 6 are going to get single filed out. Saw a little shimmy there out of the 4 of Brian Schilling. Don't want to be having internet connection problems this late in the race if you can help it. Jessica Shelton up there. I think she's now slotted into 7th. Dave Melson into 8th as that inside line's losing momentum. Farrell and Andre Mahjong starting to fade back towards the latter half of the top 10. Bernie Mobbs trying to swing around the outside line as well. There's John Godfrey in the 7-11. Keith Hughes is the only multi-time winner on the season, but Godfrey, Hewlick, Keith Hughes, I already mentioned Keith Hughes. Let me try that again. John Godfrey, Doug Hewlick, Josh Metallic, and Jeremy Jeffries trying to join Keith Hughes as a multi-time winner and rack up some more bonus points like driver 82.
I mean, I was gonna let it go, but
That's okay. I caught it. I didn't let it
I was
go.
gonna let that go.
You were more gracious than I was. Just saw Greg Palmer jump up from the bottom to the top, trying to lead an outside line there. How about this? The 22, the 23, and the 24. You can't script this stuff. Look at that. We don't have a 25 in the field, I don't think. No, we don't. Or a 21, so. But Palmer trying to make something happen in that Hooters Chevrolet Silverado. Doug Hewlett's got nothing to lose. He is inside the top 20 in the points, former winner this season. And Joe DeSpirito is trying to work his way back up to the front. I believe that Joe DeSpirito was part of the group of drivers that came to pit lane under this caution. I don't think he's going to be able to make it on fuel. From what I understood from our in-race driver, Jessica Schulten, even the drivers that pitted are about 6 laps short of making it the rest of the way. So they're still going to have to come to pit lane.
Oh yeah, because even normal Talladega can. There's no way to save fuel, but with the 2 and 3 wide we've seen today.
Look at the drivers we've got up here at the front of the field. And, we talked about the drivers that coming into this race are down below the top 12 in the point standings. How about the drivers that haven't picked up a checkered flag yet this year? Grant Wesley, former champion from a couple of seasons ago, still looking for his first checkered flag on the year. Brian Schilling, the defending champion of the series, currently winless. Tim Novsker, he's had multi-win seasons numerous times here in this series. He's still winless. You got Chuck McClure, former champion in his own rights. He's still looking for a checkered flag this season. It's amazing how many drivers are still sitting there with a 0 in the win column when normally we're so used to seeing them, if not with 1, maybe even 2 or 3 wins coming into the final few races of the regular season.
Yeah, it's really interesting with how they've only made a few changes to the schedule and the way they run things here with qualifying, but it's drastically changed how the point standings have looked so far.
Had a
And
couple
we've
of
still got
curveballs.
more races.
Yeah, we've had a couple of curveballs thrown at these drivers. Let's talk about the big curveball at the end of the season. Normally, it is a 5-race playoff schedule. 2 races, we have a cutoff. 2 more races, we have another cutoff determining our final 4, and the final 4 compete in a 1-race season finale. But now, the reason we have the 8 regular season races is we were door banging. Was that Rivard? Yeah, Rivard and Brian Lavelle down the back straightaway. I don't know what that was all about, but that could have very easily been our 6th caution of the night. But
they're still right next to each other, even in the corner.
this may not be over. We're going to stay with this area right now, but the fact that now the 8 regular season races, because we have 6 playoff races, 2 races, eliminations, 2 races, eliminations, and then a 2-race final round for the final 4. It's not a one-and-done race. You have to be consistent for 2 races to be able to win the championship.
Which can add a lot of chaos, and as the field laps by safely by Jeremy Jeffries.
I mean, consider the fact that we could end up having 40-car fields in those final 2 races on the season. And say you're a driver that's been consistent all regular season long, you've been consistent in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and you find yourself with a DNF or outside the top 30 or what have you, with 1 race remaining to battle for the championship against your other 3 competitors. It really is going to make these drivers have to think a lot more than they've had to in seasons past with the championship hanging in the balance.
Yeah, got some. Oh, something happened in the back.
And caution is out.
Ooh.
Yellow flag's going to wave for the 6th time tonight. And guess what, Matt? We're in the fuel window. Final pit stop of the evening, so now it's going to be a you got what you got when the green flag flies this next time. This is with more than 10 laps to go, so it is still frozen field. It is not race back until 10 to go. And don't know. Oh, wow. Ken Roberts in the 55.
Yeah, and Wayne Pribnow in the 14.
Little Caesars. I believe that's a... Is that a Ford?
Ford.
I believe for the 14? Yeah. Bob Dixon in the 143 going through the grass. Looks like he was going to come to pit road, but pits are closed. I don't know if maybe he got involved, but there's Ken smoking, and that truck has all the looks of one that's been up and over. It's got roof damage there just above the driver's side compartment. See if
Oh
we can
yeah,
find
he
out
was.
what happened here. This was over in turn 2, looks like.
It started in turn one, and yet three trucks went up and over.
But that was almost kind of like one of those gray line scenarios, right? Where one truck comes down a little bit, one truck comes up a little bit between Wayne Pribnow and Greg Palmer.
And then even I think the 55 was hard in the back of Pribnow trying to
Yeah, he
give
gave him a
him a
big
run, and
shot,
then
didn't he?
it yeah, 14 is half a truck below the 22, and the 55 is another half a truck down. You can literally put the 55 under the 22.
Those are some big hits there. Bob Dixon's actually riding up on the hood of Wayne Pribnow, Wiley Coate, and Richard Martin. Big hits for both of those machines.
Oof.
We're going to have to look here in just a moment at the point standings because I think that a couple of the drivers involved in this wreck, they were in that category we were looking at that could maybe point their way into the top 12 if they had a consistent run tonight and a consistent run next week. They may be very quickly falling into the must-win category next week. But some big hits right there. 43 upside down, 55 upside down. The 5 of Wiley Coate had the rear decklet almost to the upper layer of the catch fence.
Oh, he actually flipped over the other way and had the roof in the outside wall.
And you
Not
know
very
who's
often you see it.
and you know who this is benefiting right now? The one of Jeremy Jeffries. He's going to get the lucky dog again. He'll get back on the lead lap, and he's going to pick up a couple of spots, I think, because at least one driver is definitely out of the race. We can confirm that being Ken Roberts.
And two counting the 5, because that engine was definitely smoking in my
And Bob
replays.
Sire is also going to get the lucky dog. Yeah, we had only two drivers a lap down. They're both going to get the free pass. So Sire and Jeffries will be back on the lead lap when we go back green. And no surprise, everyone was on pit road. Everybody was going to be able to make it the rest of the way when they made this final pit stop. So now, we think we've seen aggression here in the first 50 laps. Now with pit road no longer a concern, everything's going to take place above that double yellow line. Things are going to get very interesting here in the closing stages.
And unfortunately, just as I thought, the 5 did have to retire behind the wall with too much damage with that truck.
Ken Roberts, we pretty much established that he would have been in a must-win situation almost pretty much tonight, based on how far back he was in points. I think that with this DNF, he is now out of championship contention of advancing into the playoffs. But for Wiley Coate, with that DNF, he was 22nd in points. He was 15 points behind 20th in the standings. More importantly, if I can do some quick math here, he was 52 points behind 12th in the standings. So he may still be mathematically within striking distance of 20th heading into next week, but it is pretty much guaranteed he is in a must-win situation if he is going to put that number 5 into the playoffs here for season 58.
Yeah, I don't see how. I say that, but then again, with the chaos we've seen, well, never mind. He's out of the race. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm going to have to double check too. I might be wrong, but I believe that the last couple of races Wiley Coate has run at BSR actually finished rather well. He ended up finishing 14th back in the second race of the season at the first debut race at BSR, and then a couple of weeks ago he ended up finishing 13th. So he's got some pretty good numbers when it comes to that racetrack. Might be able to make his way up into the top 10, top 5, and of course has to be the race winner next week for a last-ditch chance of getting into the playoffs. But like you said, it's super speedway racing. Stranger things have happened. As soon as the green flag flies, every driver that crosses underneath that flag stand has a shot of winning the race. So that's why you're going to want to have to tune in next week and find out if we're going to have a Cinderella story like that with the driver getting a last-minute playoff position. Field's going to be doubling up here. We should get the 1 to green next time by. Jeffries and Sire will get their laps back. While they do this under pacing, we're going to step aside for a quick moment and get a word from our sponsor, Ultimate Garage Floors. The following presentation of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series on the Flatout Racing Network is brought to you by Ultimate Garage Floors. Ultimate Garage Floors is very active in the garage remodeling community, staying current with the latest technologies and custom configurations so that we can bring you the highest quality installations. As a Northern Virginia Exposy flooring installer, we focus on garages and commercial flooring to perfect our craft and bring you high results. In a space that gets as much wear and tear as your garage, you want to be able to trust that the cabinets and flooring we install are ready to withstand against high traffic and regular use. That is why we include a lifetime warranty with our services so that you know we stand behind the quality of our work. To get started with a free consultation, call us at 540-931-9006 or visit us on the web at ultimategaragefloorsva.net. That's ultimategaragefloorsva.net. Flagman ready to get us back underway here at Talladega. It's going to be a total of 11 laps to go here. All cautions at this point will be race back as Joe DeSpirito and Grant Wesley lead us to the line. You see those second row trucks. Brian Schilling, Tim Knopfsker trying to give the respective lines a big shove here into turn one.
They were ready.
Is that the 77 of Donnie Garrett up on that outside line? Didn't we see him airborne in the tri-oval?
Yes, we did.
That is one of the strangest things, as I said, about moderate damage. Something that looks like it could take a driver out of the race. Not, 'tis only a flesh wound. It'll buff out. And Garrett is in technically a must-win situation, remember, too. Trying to get redemption for that victory that was rescinded earlier on this year.
Oh, a little bit of chaos between the 38 and the 338 for a second. Had me a little nervous.
Got a couple of X-Factor drivers up here inside of the top 10. See that 043, Brian Lavelle. I think this is his second start on the year. I might be wrong. It's either second or third. And right now, he is holding down that inside line. Third truck on that inside line. Pushed up a little bit there into Donnie Garrett, 77.
Even look, two trucks behind him.
Whoa, Bernie Mob's back there. I just saw him get all out of shape. I think he saved it, but I think he bumper grabbed off the 43 of Richard Martin, and he had a big-time slide down the backstretch.
Yeah, he definitely saved it, but
wow,
that was some sideways.
Great save there by Bernie Mobs, but that drops him quite a ways back. He was, I think, 30th when he crossed the line last time by. He'll be all the way back to 35th or 36th. As up here at the front, I'm not seeing a whole lot of daylight between the front bumpers and the back bumpers of these trucks right now. Push has definitely come to shove.
Oh, even as you noticed the 31, I saw the 88 truck slide down between the 24 and the 4, and I can literally see the 4's front bumper through the back tailgate of the 88. They are not lifting.
Grant Wesley, 7th in overall points coming into this race. At this point, would be locked into a playoff spot via points, but we've heard it from Grant. He doesn't want to ride. He doesn't want to finish second. He wants to win every race he starts. And right in front of him, Joe DeSpirito. It's been a long winless spell for him as well. We'll see if these two are going to be the ones to duke it out for this checkered flag. Donnie Garrett in the middle. He nearly wrecked into the 088 of Tim Knopfsker, and look at them all check up behind. Andre Mahjong, Dave Melson, they're almost all bouncing off each other. How are we still green?
I have no idea.
Look at Schilling. Here comes Brian Schilling to the top with help from Chuck McClure for the lead.
There go the 88 and the 24. At least for now.
Well, they're working together because they have to. They got no lane to be able to go to. They've been pinned down to that yellow line, and Schilling will go to the point. Brian Schilling, last season's champion, ended up winning a race that, in all honesty, I thought he was down and out, had damage, got shoved to the win to be able to advance into the Final Four, and now trying to, for the first time since, I want to say, I think Joe DeSpirito was the last driver to win back-to-back championships here in the Tally Challenge. But he's got McClure right behind him. I mentioned it before, Schilling and McClure are both looking for their first checkered flag on the year.
Yeah, and these guys are not lifting. There's no way we get to 66 without another wreck. There's no way.
Here's the interesting thing. More often than not, we end up putting lap 62's completion as the point of no return. Usually around that time, we have lap machines. All drivers that are on the racetrack right now, all 37 of them, are on the lead lap. So if we had a caution come out on lap 62, we may be able to get a one-lap shootout. That is provided in these next 3 laps or so they don't catch up to that slower machine of Jeremy Jeffries and put him a lap down again.
Ooh, Donnie Garrett outside the 28.
He's got Kelly Causey helping. John Godfrey's up there. Bobby Farrell's up there, and now Lavelle wanted to go up there. Donnie Garrett says, no.
I thought they were about to split it 4 wide.
That's stalled. That's stalled, that outside line, though. The 043 moving up, and now Bobby Farrell, he's stuck in the sucker hole. He's going towards the back as he's got DeSpirito on driver's left, Causey on driver's right, and there's a line on either lane looking to take advantage of the 92. Now Lavelle's going to get kicked up to the outside line, and Garrett says nope, he's going to go up to the 3rd lane. It's almost not a question of if they wreck, it's a question of when they wreck right now, because these trucks are dancing around.
There's no almost to that. And just like you said, here they come. They're catching the one.
So if they are going to lap the Jeremy Jeffries machines, that means that right now, this would be the point of no return. Next flag will end the race, whether it be the caution or whether it be the white flag. So we'll give the usual disclaimer. If a caution comes out, we will go back post-race and look at what happened, or under pacing, depending on when it flies. But we will stay up here at the front and watch the battle back to the start-finish line. Right now, they're chasing the 4 of Brian Schilling, who's got to make that rear bumper as wide as he possibly can.
Well, you're keeping an eye on the front. I'm just scrolling up and down the field because there's no...
We got him 3 wide and mid-pack.
Oh.
Almost 4 wide. Paglia's gotten shuffled 3 wide. He's going towards the back there, just inside the top 10.
I saw a yellow truck shoot down to the inside in the middle of the trioval, and it startled me.
Gonna be 2.5 laps to go here on the back straightaway. Schilling, McClure, Novsker. Caution's out! Caution is out. Yellow flag is waving. We're racing back to the caution, and look at them all start fanning out on the back stretch. The leaders wreck! The leaders have wrecked! Who gets through?
Oh my!
Is it Wesley? Wesley's gotten through in the 88! The entire front of the field just wrecked. Grant Wesley is the one that squeaks through. Josh Metallic's in second. Third place, I believe, is that Seminara or is that Godfrey? I think that's Seminara. As coming to the caution, it's Grant Wesley who's going to lead us to the yellow. 2 laps to go, and Grant Wesley, who crossed the line in 5th last time by, crosses the line in P1 and has more than likely won this race under yellow.
Well, yeah, with only 2 laps to go, I do not see them getting this race restarted.
No, there's no
with
way. There is no way we're getting back green. A chain reaction bump at the front, and your entire top 5 pretty much got taken out in that one. And you just knew. Caution was waving. They saw the caution lights. They knew there was half a racetrack to be able to get back to the line first.
And I'll be honest, I'm probably glad right now that we can't hear the driver audio, because I'm sure it is chaos in that room.
My gracious. Well, we've got the opportunity here, I think. We'll see the white flag this next time by. Let's quickly see if we can drop back, at least get a preliminary replay of what brings out this final caution of the evening. And as we watch this, keep an eye on the neon yellow number 88 of Grant Wesley. Actually, before we look at that, we got to look at what actually brought out the caution. I think it was David Cannon in the 3. Was going into turn 1. And what happens to him? Ooh, Crivello and Andre Majon get together. Jason Scheck. There's Cannon, and then they continue direct further up. Tate Dorsey, JT Mayhew, and Cy Jones. And then up here at the front, I don't know if we can get up here quickly enough. Now the wreck's already taken place. There you see Novsker, Shelton, Garrett, Schilling. Almost kind of reminded me, I don't recall what year, you might remember when we ended up having the wreck where Tony Stewart went up and over. We only had, what was it, Matt Kenseth, Jeff Gordon, and Kyle Busch got through the wreck. That's what that kind of reminded me of, where we had this huge wreck at the front, and we only saw 3 trucks kind of coming out all together out of turn 4.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that was, like, 2015, I think? Maybe, no, 2012, that's what it was. And
here's the wreck at the front. Chain reaction. Espirito into Novsker, into McClure, into Schilling. Wow. And basically at that point in time, too, you see a lot of drivers flipping, taking hard hits. At that point in time, it's never lift, right? I mean, yeah, there's a wreck, but there's positions, there's points to be gained. If you lift, you're more than likely going to get run over because somebody else behind you is going to have the mentality of not to lift.
Yeah. Especially since you know the caution's already out, and that this race is over. You're literally just trying to get whatever position you can.
White flag has already been displayed. The field's coming out of turn 4, so we're going to come back to live action. Grant Wesley, winless so far this season. Been consistent, 7th in points coming into this race. But now he is going to all but secure himself a spot in the playoffs. He'll add some bonus points towards his reformatted playoff standings total. And the former champion is going to look to be a 2-time champ in the Talladega Challenge, as he will join the likes of Keith Hughes and Doug Hulick, John Godfrey, Jeremy Jeffries, drivers that have locked themselves into the playoffs. Grant Wesley wins here tonight at Talladega. Metallic gets second, and Bob Seminara brings it home in the 3rd position, followed by Ronald Lucet and Bobby Farrell. I don't know here, Matt. We may have a new points leader heading into next week. Farrell finishing 5th, Despirito in that wreck finishing 26th. Those two were only separated by 2 points coming into tonight. First time this season, first time in his career, Bobby Farrell may be the new driver at the top of the point standings.
Yeah, that last couple wrecks just caused so much chaos. It would take forever to try to figure out where everybody finished.
Grant Wesley getting the congratulatory bumps there. A couple of congratulatory spins down the back straightaway.
Woohoo!
And he'll bring it down here to the front straightaway to the start finish line, and he'll get ready to begin the celebration. His first win of season 58.
So I
And
finally found.
you can see it there too. There's right rear damage on this Menard Chevrolet. He was in the wreck. He just was able to use the wall to keep it straight and keep it pointed in the right direction. And are we even going to get burnouts? I think he just downshifted and grenaded the engine. It's still running, but it is definitely smoking. I don't honestly not sure how that engine's actually still running.
Well, it's like
But
when we were messing around the other night before another race, and we were able to get the trucks driving with blown engines. So this game just sometimes does that. So I don't know what that's all about.
we saw Rodney Sullins pull up alongside. Rodney going to bring it home in 8th position. And yeah, looks like Grant did not have power in the truck to be able to do a burnout. So we're going to just real quickly, we're going to go back. We're going to look at a couple more angles of the replay of that final wreck coming to the checkers before we talk with our top 3 finishers here tonight. Grant was, as mentioned, in the 5th position, and we're going to focus on the 88 truck and watch. This is exactly what I was saying. He was involved in the wreck. He got pancaked into the outside wall, but the wall actually saved him and kept him going. Right there, gets sandwiched into the wall. Metallic's able to squeeze through on that top side as well, and then the door closes on Donnie Garrett. And let's see what avenue Bob Seminara in the 712 took, because I think he actually got through on the inside line, and whoa, he narrowly avoided this one. Drivers ahead of him and drivers behind him got swept up. Watch this, right place, right time. Most of the trucks migrated down to the inside line here, just narrowly avoid Shelton. And there you see it, there's Godfrey, there's Palmer. They were right behind him in that same line. But trucks on the top came down and swept them up. Seminara was the only one able to get through in that portion of the field. And you saw further back, Ronald Lucet and Bobby Farrell were able to get through the carnage as well. As consequence, they're going to complete the top 5 as we take a look at the rest of the finishing results. Frank Rivard's going to bring it home in 6th. Donnie Garrett in 7th. So not necessarily a must-win situation, I don't think, for driver 77. He might be able to point his way into the top 12 next week. We'll wait to see what the points look like after this one's over. Rodney Sullins there in 8th. Jason Scheck, great comeback for him as he spent a good portion of this race towards the tail end of the field. He gets 9th, and Brian Lavelle is going to bring it home in 10th. Glenn Harrison 11th, JT Mayhew 12th, 13th for Bernie Mobbs. Brian Schilling, who was leading on that final lap, he's going to bring it home 14th. Richard Martin 15th. Then Melson, Godfrey, Sire, Cy Jones, and 2-time winner Keith Hughes are going to complete the top 20. A lot of the drivers we had up there inside of the top 5, top 10 on that final lap. Here you see where they finished. McClure 21st, Nofsker 22nd, Despirito down in 26th, Shelton down there in the 30th position. Kelly Causey was up there. He finishes in 32nd, so not the finishes these drivers were looking for, obviously. I think Mark Pagli was actually up there in that lead group as well. He DNFs before reaching the conclusion of this race in 36th position. Jeffries was able to pick up a couple of spots. He would have probably finished in the 39th spot had he DNF'd when involved in the wreck. He finishes 35th, so a net gain of about 4 points right there. We saw David Cannon upside down there in that wreck over in turn one that brought out the final yellow. He'll finish in 37th. Ken Roberts, engine problems after he was involved in a big wreck over in 1 and 2. He finishes 38th. Wiley Coate in 39th. And Mike Rogers will finish out the field in the 40th position. I think there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking for the point standings here, Matt, just based off of where certain drivers finished. Most importantly, I think we're going to have that points shakeup down around that 12th position in the cut line as far as points are concerned. A lot of drivers, I think, next week, they won't necessarily be in must-win situations, but boy, they're going to need good performances to make sure that if they don't win, they at least can point their way into the postseason.
Oh yeah, I was looking, and most of around that 12th position was single points. So yeah, depending on if these um, results are confirmed, just have it to sit there, and I feel bad for the guy that's got to figure out the points because that last caution became chaos
And remember,
in
too,
true Talladega fashion.
there were a lot of things that went down there on that final run to the caution. Obviously, the initial contact, but then who knows? There may end up being penalties for drivers that may have made contact with others heading into that wreck. Like you said, there's going to be a lot that the administration is going to be having to look at here during the course of the week. So there is not a guarantee that these standings we showed you, these finishing results, are absolutely official. They are currently unofficial. And if we end up having any changes, we will let you know of them next week and the subsequent scenarios as far as a potential postseason berth as a result. But let's see if we can dial up some of the drivers that had the good fortune of being able to get through that final wreck and subsequently finish on the podium. Let's see if we can start with the driver that brings it home P3, Bob Seminara. Hey, Bob, Matt, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, what's going on, Seth?
I'll tell you what, a lot of times at super speedways, we know you got to be in the right place at the right time, and you definitely were that going into turn three, able to sneak through that big wreck. It all culminated above you, behind you, but you emerged without a scratch and bring it home third place right on the eaves of this upcoming regular season finale. Obviously, we know that you wanted this checkered flag, but how important was it to get through that wreck, get these points, and get yourself ahead of that cut line heading into next week?
It's very important because the last race, I had to take a black flag there at the end, and I went from 8th place to 26. So I definitely needed a top 15. The way the night started out, I had a bad 1 hour and 30 minutes there. So I'm very happy with the ending.
So obviously, we've talked about the fact that a lot of changes for you drivers in terms of several different things that you've been used to. The regular season has been shortened. The ability to point your way in has kind of been extended down to 12th in points. Looks like based off of the unofficial point standings, you're sitting 10th in points. You've got about 9 points between yourself and that 12th in the standings cut line. So how does the mentality now change going into next week? Are you in a must win situation mentality? Are you keeping an eye on drivers that are around you in points and gauging where you're going to be in the field as opposed to them? Are you just going out looking for consistency? I mean, are you strategizing now or do you wait until that green flag flies next week?
I'll have to look at it, look at the standings, but I probably have the worst starting position of everybody. It's averaging like 29 or 30th. So that makes a big, that'll affect my decision. But like tonight, being back there and having getting off to a rough start, I would have took a top 15, top 20. So I may still be looking at that and looking at the guys that I'm racing against.
Obviously, as well, with it being the regular season finale at a track that you drivers have not been to all that often, the BSR Super Speedway. I mean, you talk about starting track position, though, but what about kind of getting adjusted here? You've had two previous starts at that racetrack. Well, actually, three previous starts, I should say. Is there a game plan formulated for that racetrack? Because more often than not, you would have been in previous seasons coming right back here to Talladega with the scenario.
Yeah, I like that track. So I've had some good runs there, and fuel mileage got me one race. But no, I like running that. So yeah, I got no problem with that. It seems like we hold our lines a little better. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, great run for you here tonight, Bob. Congratulations on surviving that carnage, coming back to the checkered flag. Before we let you go, the floor is yours for thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, thank you, FRN, RTG, and everybody. FTMF, Q, Bernie's Paints, Mobs Motors, and my boys. And yeah, that's a third. We'll keep going.
That's Bob Seminara, podium finish here tonight, getting himself ready for next week's season finale for the regular season at BSR. Best of luck there. Enjoy your good finish here tonight.
All right, thanks. Have a good week.
And we will be dialing up our second place finisher in a minute. But, you talked about down around that cut line, Matt, how close points are. Despite finishing third place here tonight, Seminare only gains one spot in the point standings, and as mentioned, is still within range of possibly with a bad performance last week, falling out or next week, falling outside of the top 12 in the point standings. So the points so close around that cut line. It's good for some drivers, but not so good for others, and Seminara is on the not so good side of that.
Yeah, next week is. We thought tonight was chaotic. Next week is. I have a feeling is going to be really chaotic.
Definitely is. Well, it's got to be good when you're heading into that regular season finale, knowing that you are locked into a playoff position. That is the case for the driver we're getting ready to talk to now. He is third in overall points standings, and he has a win to fall back on, so he will battle for the championship here in season 58. Let's see if we can dial up Josh Metallic. Hey, Josh, Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I do. I do.
I'll tell you what, we talked just moments ago with Seminara, who was the lucky driver when the hole closed up behind him on the inside line. You were the last lucky driver on the outside line there. The next truck behind you, door closed and was involved in that big wreck. You bring it home second place here tonight. That all but confirms you're going to be battling for the championship regardless what happens next week. So describe what was going on there, though, on that final lap, because we talk about the most difficult places to avoid a wreck. Going into a corner at Talladega has to be one of the worst.
Yeah, I got I think the last restart was on the low side and never really had much of an opportunity to go anywhere else to mix it up. And then the people behind me kind of fell off and was basically struggling. And then the third line came in, a couple guys went low, and I got some help to get back up at least into the top 10 to be in the conversation. And I could see a lot of desperate people up near the front, guys that needed wins for the playoffs. That were going for it. And if I could get up there, I would have been able to help some of them. But there was, you know, you can't just go where you want to go. You're boxed in so much of the time. And I saw it all break loose and just went for open space. And I thought I was good. And then there was a second wreck, and I just kept going up, 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 bounced off the wall. And once I realized what all happened, I'm like, there's one guy left, and my speed was down, so I didn't have a chance to catch him. But after all that chaos, top three, top 10, I'll definitely take it.
Not only that, but you end up winning the bracket battle that you were in here this week as well, moving on to the semifinals on the winner's side. You mentioned the word desperation, and we were talking about this. We know that we've got one more race coming up, but it's at Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway, a track that a lot of these drivers don't have a super whole lot of experience, not nearly as much as they have here at Talladega. This is a track up until last season we came to every single week, season after season. So did drivers, do you think, based off of what you're saying, kind of eye this particular race as, if I'm in a must-win situation, this is where I want to have that scenario. This is where I want to get the checkered flag because there's too many unknowns for next week.
Yeah, it kind of cuts both ways. You could say, this is the track you're used to, you've run the most, and the other side is a track that no one is an expert on with BSR, perhaps, and you got an advantage there. So, kind of depends on how you look at it. The big difference between them is the lanes on the track. The middle lane at Tally V3 is basically two lanes, and then the low and middle lanes are a lane apiece. and then the BSR it's evened out, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, basically. So it makes you feel like you have more space to drive, even though the walls are the same distance from inside to outside, all that stuff. So when the race goes, no matter what track it is, no matter what time of the race it is, when it gets down to the checkers, it doesn't matter which track they're going all the way and making every possible move, try and get it.
You got a lot of different options heading into next week. Obviously, with locking yourself into the playoffs, you could go out there with the bring home the steering wheel or bring home the trophy mentality. You're up there within striking distance of the overall points lead, which we know pays out very valuable bonus points once the playoff stands are reformatted. And as already mentioned, you're moving on to the semifinals of the bracket series. So an opportunity to maybe move on to the finals of that. So, I mean, which are you going to be the most focused on when the green flag flies next week?
Uh, keep doing the same stuff. I mean, obviously, if I can help some people, I definitely will. Um, but it's too tough. 40 cars, you can't choreograph these things. It just has to line up, and then you have to say, okay, I'll help. But planning and setting up, hey, you get here, you get here, and we'll go together. It never works. So you basically wait until 5 to go and hope you're close to someone you're trying to work with. And if it happens, then great. I'm definitely happy to help a couple guys that are deserving of being in the playoffs. If they can get a top 20 to win, I don't mind helping, but I'm still racing for something as well. If I can't help anyone, I'm definitely going to go get the best possible finish I can.
Well, Josh, a great run for you here tonight heading into that regular season finale. We know you've been here before, won a championship in the past, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see what that 39 does when the green flag flies next week in preparation for the playoffs. Congratulations on the great run tonight. Before we let you go, we'll turn the mic over to you for for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks always to you, Seth, and Matt as well. First time, Matt will say they're not all like this. We've had caution free before, 1, 2 cautions. Tonight was just kind of chaos. But thanks to you guys as always. Bones and Prime for giving us a place to race. They do a lot of stuff that no one wants to do that they have to do. And Tim and Wiley. I mean, you've seen all the chaos tonight. We have to go through all this together tomorrow or Saturday and figure it all out. They're always there to help with that. And the drivers, 40 cars. Again, it was rough. We had a few new guys, a few guys that hadn't been around in a while. You'll have races like this, but I'm sure next week will be cleaner. It'll be just as competitive, but I'm sure it'll be pretty clean too. So thanks to you guys, and congrats to Grant on the win.
Josh Metallic brings it home second place here tonight at Talladega, confirming himself a spot in the playoffs. Congratulations on that once again. Best of luck next week.
Thank you.
And another driver with the victory here tonight that has confirmed himself a spot in the playoffs based off of the checkered flag and where he is currently positioned in points is the driver that's down in victory lane right now, celebrating his first win of season 58. Let's see if we can talk with Grant Wesley. Grant, Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Oh yeah, I got you guys.
I want to take a little journey with you there on that final restart and run to the eventual checkered flag. You lead the field to green. You and the 24 get kind of caught out in that inside line. You drift back just around the 5th, 6th position. Next thing you know, you guys are at the point of no return. Caution comes out. We know you guys are racing back to that yellow. You were 5th when you crossed the start finish line. You come around, just squeeze through on that outside line to come around and take that checkered flag. I mean, at the point that you had that contact with, I think it was the 24 drifted up into you, did you still think you had a shot of getting back to the start finish line first truck out of turn 4?
So yeah, I mean I drive in roof cam, so we'll start with that little fact. So I only see the hood of my truck and everything in front of me. And when I seen those guys getting together, which was only by actually back up to coming off turn 2 there right before the wreck, I was actually about to look under Joe, and I seen Jessica Shelton. She was looking under me, so I was like, "Well, all right, I'll go to the outside then. I'll go with Tim because he had Chuck on the bottom, Tim up top, Joe was doing the middle. So I was going to go up top with Tim, and of course that's when everything broke loose, and I was already up top, so I just put her against the wall. I figured if someone got into me, it wouldn't spin me if I was against the wall. But so I'm on in roof cam. I don't see any trucks, and then I feel a truck hit me. And you know how this game is. Anytime you're against the wall and the truck hits you, sometimes it pops you straight up in the air. So just knowing my luck with these, last lap wrecks, I usually don't make it through it, especially whenever it's going for the win. And so I was just waiting any minute just to go flying through the air, but it never happened. Truck stayed straight, got a little right side damage, but it was just enough to get us to the end.
Matt and I were talking about this during the race. We go down the list, and there are so many drivers that we're so used to seeing having at least one victory by this portion of the season that came into tonight still with a 0 in the win column, and you were one of those drivers. How important was it for you here, not only in terms of momentum, but also to continue to rack up the playoff points in preparation for trying to capture your second championship, to get this checkered flag here tonight? Because we know you had a strong truck. You were out in front for a race leading 20 laps, able to close out the deal. I mean, we know you always want that checkered flag, but how important was it here tonight to get it heading into the regular season finale?
Oh, it was really important. This season I started off, made a little pit road mistake in the first race. I had an eighth place finish, I think it was, and I got a penalty post race, and that mired me back pretty far. So I started pretty deep in the points on this little, I don't know, what is it, an 8 race run or a 9 race run, something like that. And so yeah, I was behind, and honestly, coming into this race, I was looking at the points, and I was actually thinking I was seventh in points. They were tight, but I was like, man, I mean, it won't take much. I could drop out of this thing, with 2 races to go. So I was just kind of mentally thinking, I just need a good top 5 finish tonight. I mean, a win would be nice, but I really needed those points. So that was kind of my prerogative for tonight. But hey, I'll take a win anytime also.
You say you could have fallen outside of the top 12, but on the opposite side, you've now leapfrogged up into the regular season championship battle. You're only 2 points behind the new points leader, Bobby Farrell. So next week, where does the priority lie? Are you looking for a second victory, rack up the bonus points there, or are you gunning for the bonus points that the regular season champ gets?
Oh, absolutely going for that second win, and I really want to have that regular season championship. Obviously those bonus points that go with that are really valuable. Also, the bonus points that go with an additional win, I'll carry those into the chase, and those will be really valuable. So I'm going for both of those.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing this bright neon yellow number 88 and what it does next week in that regular season finale. Now locked into the playoffs with this victory. No way you can fall outside the top 20 in the points. And we'll see if you can close it out with that regular season championship as well. Grant, before we let you go and continue your celebration, the floor is yours for Victory Lane. Thank you, sponsors, and shout outs.
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Bobby Farrell. He's leading the regular season points now with 1 race to go. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, congratulations to him on that. I'd like to thank the owners here, David Cannon, Sean Prime, for giving us an awesome place to race. All the admins here on Thursday, Josh, Wiley, Tim, just everybody who works behind the scenes. This is one of the best leagues around, so I'm just proud to be a part of it. I'd like to thank you guys with Flatout Racing Network, Seth and Matt. Looking forward to watching the awesome broadcast back, as always. I'd like to thank my friends and family for watching, my teammates with XFM, and my girlfriend, Brittany.
Well, Grant Wesley, he's finally back in victory lane, his first checkered flag of season 58, and we'll look to see what he does in preparation for the playoffs in next week's regular season finale. Congratulations once again, Grant, and best of luck next week.
Hey, thanks, guys.
So as Grant continues his celebration, first win on the season, I want to go back to a point that Josh Metallic made here, Matt, where he said tonight was chaotic. He felt that there was desperation. He thinks next week will be a little bit cleaner. I don't know. I mean, it's a super speedway. It's a regular season finale. A lot of drivers are going to be in scenarios of must point in, must win to get in. Ooh, I think that's a very optimistic assessment. I think we're going to see a lot of action next week.
That and like say, I know it's a slightly different version, but having run burnt screwdrivers and how much more movement there is. I this one was chaotic. I see that one being just as or even more chaotic.
Absolutely. Now, mention the fact that after this race, of course, the standings are unofficial. The finishing results are unofficial. But if we go down the list, it looks like we can start to check off some drivers that we know for absolute certainty are going to battle in this season's playoffs. Grant Wesley, our winner here tonight. Josh Metallic, Keith Hughes, Jeremy Jeffries. Those drivers right now, none of them any lower than ninth in points. Very unlikely mathematically that they will drop outside of the top 20 in the point standings. It's also looking like John Godfrey is in a pretty good situation right now. Doug Hewlick also, he's about 20 some odd points. I think it's 23 points ahead of 20th in the standings. So if he can at least get a top 15 next week, I think he's going to lock himself out in via a win. We've got some drivers right now as well that look like they are going to maybe be safe to point their way in via top 12. Looking at Bobby Farrell, and Bobby Farrell actually is the only one because Josh Metallic is a former winner. Bobby Farrell might be the only driver that could point his way in confirmed into next week. But you mentioned it. Look at some of these drivers that we've got down here, either just above or just below the cut line. Rodney Sullins, Richard Martin, Bob Seminara, Kelly Causey, Bernie Mobbs is the cut line driver right now. Jeff Crivello still could point his way in. Donnie Garrett, Chuck McClure, they could still point their way in. There's about 7, 8, 9 drivers that are going to battle it out here points wise, not even talking about race win, points wise, getting themselves into the playoffs next week for about maybe 3 or 4 of those final points paying spots.
Yeah, this is literally gonna be you have to put your truck in the perfect spot every single second of the race. There is no room for error. Like even all those guys you mentioned off, the probably the only one, maybe two that I would say would be safe is probably Grant at worst and maybe Bobby with the points. But yeah, if anybody puts a wheel wrong, their season is probably over next week.
And listen to some of these names that are either in the absolutely must win or maybe must win situation heading into next week. Donnie Garrett, Chuck McClure, they're in the kind of maybe. They could mathematically point their way in, but they're borderline in a must win situation. Greg Palmer, Tim Nofsker, Bob Dixon, Glenn Harris, Mark Paglia, Jason Scheck. Right now, those appear to be the drivers that mathematically could be inside the top 20 if they go to victory lane next week and get a last minute playoff spot. Some of the ones that jump out to me, Tim Nofsker, he was a multi-time winner either last season or 2 seasons ago. Chuck McClure is a former champion. It's incredible that these drivers are finding themselves practically in must-win situations with only one race left to go. Now, not to say it can't be done, because the guy who went to victory lane here tonight, Grant Wesley, he was in a must-win situation not once but twice during his championship season back in season 56. So it can be done, but the odds are not necessarily in your favor.
Yeah, this is one time where I will quote Star Wars and say, "Never tell me the odds," because there is. Oh my goodness, I am glad to be up here in the booth and not there down there having to try to figure that out.
Well, I'll tell you, we've broadcasted a number of these seasons for the Tally Challenge, and it's gotten to the point now where I've accepted that I'm not going to be able to figure out all the calculations live. I'm just going to throw up my hands, wait until the race is over, and find out who's in the playoffs. I can make speculations, but I cannot make confirmations because just so much happens every single corner of every single lap, the constant change of points positioning. It's going to be a lot of fun to see who eventually emerges victorious as a playoff contender. Right now, as things stand, we could have as many as 14 playoff contenders. We could have maybe 15, depending on scenarios heading to next week. Who knows? It's super speedway racing. anything can happen, and hopefully everybody enjoyed our coverage tonight and will join us next week for that regular season finale. It will take place at Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway next Thursday night. Green flag gonna fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Matt, we heard it. The sense of urgency, the desperation, the drivers could feel it. We saw it up here in the booth. It was a crazy one from start to finish. An unbelievable race here tonight where it came down to right place, right time to even finish in the podium coming to the checkered flag. I appreciate you joining me up in the booth.
This was a lot of fun, and I look forward to being able to do it again at some point. Because oh my goodness.
Well, thanks once again to everybody for tuning in here tonight. We hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. Again, be sure to tune in next week. We bring you the regular season finale. The playoffs get put together, and who knows, based off of what happened here tonight, we may have some storylines of drivers that may have had some good finishes on your finishing results screens that aren't exactly going to get them and may fall into a must-win situation next week. But until then, for Matt McIntyre, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy your Thursday night, folks. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of FRN, the Flatout
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed